This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze, your journey through life. And I'm sure there are many of you out there who are saying, oh, my journey is just way too much for me. I don't know how to get through it. I keep bumping into walls. I'm tripping along the way. Everybody else seems to be gliding through life, big smiles on their faces. Well, the reality of it is, we're all in the maze. We're all going to hit the wall at some point, maybe numerous times. My guest today is Racheal Richards. I met Racheal through podmatch.com. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't get to meet people like Racheal, at least as easily as I do through them. Racheal, what I loved about your bio, you said everything that I say on this podcast and in my coaching sessions. We all are going to struggle. So stop saying, that you're the only one because we all struggle. So give us a little background about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Thanks for having me, Karen. I think it was before I became a coach, just before I became an advocate for healing, before I actually took the time to look into why am I so unhappy? Why am I so unfulfilled? I struggled with massive amounts of anxiety, with depression, with just not knowing what the next step was that would keep me up at night. It got so bad when my partner decided he didn't want to spend the rest of my time, the rest of his life with me. I just couldn't see past the role I played in his life. If I wasn't his wife, if I wasn't his partner, if I wasn't his girlfriend, what was I? It got so bad. I had to call a friend of mine. I remember calling a friend of mine, I think it was 11 p.m. because my thoughts were trying to scare me. They were starting to scare me. And I felt like I needed somebody close to me to just
Sure.
remind me that, oh yeah, you're going to be okay. I had to learn that my environment doesn't determine who I am. I make the decision on who I am. And I had to learn that it's okay to feel something, but don't let it dominate you because feelings are not fact. I was my first coach, I was my first friend, and I was my first support system.
Yes.
So that's how it began.
Well, and it's interesting because separation, divorce, breaking
Mm,
up, I don't care what age you are. You can be 14 years old and going steady. And the day that you break up, it's like, oh, I'm no longer somebody's girlfriend. I don't have a date to the dance on Saturday night. And we assume that the people we're with are our identity. So I know how difficult that was for you when you're going through your divorce because I went through the same thing. Um, my first husband was a dentist. We lived in a suburban neighborhood. We had one child. I was getting active with the dental wives. Ah, that was who I was. And the day that we separated, it was like, well, I can't go with the dental wives. And
hmm.
all of our friends were taking sides. So maybe I had a play date for my son at somebody's house, but I couldn't go because I was no longer his wife. So, how did you, other than having your friend come over and hold your hand and remind you that you were going to be okay, how did you start taking the first steps to say, all right, I can do this as me?
It's amazing you asked that question. For people who I might just explain a little bit about this, but it's called cutting out the noise. At the beginning of any, we didn't actually get to marriage, right?
Yeah.
Because that was the issue, right? We also um commitment different, right? I guess, and different expectations. But cutting out the noise has to do with actually separating identities. Because a lot of us, yes, our identity became our partner. Identity became their lives. We were their support system, so much so we forgot to be our own support
Right.
system. So cutting out the noise has to do, I think the third step in cutting out the noise is actually forming a complete separation if you can. Some people can't because,
Right.
you have kids and you have a business together or something like that. But cutting out the noise means, what is my identity without him? And we're not asking for perfection. We're asking for that aha moment because there are going to be times, even after 6 months, where you drive to a place that you shared, and then suddenly it's overwhelming. You need to pull over maybe and breathe. So we're not looking for a perfect 6 months, a perfect day. We're looking for an aha moment of, I got through that. It wasn't that hard. That means I can replicate this. Identifying yourself means going back to those promises you made yourself. Because sometimes, the truth is, Karen, especially for me, before I became a coach, I was so frustrated with every partner that decided not to be with me. But when I looked back, I'm like, okay, why am I so frustrated with them? It's because I had broken all these promises, thinking that I'm going to put my life on hold for him.
Right.
And then that turned into resentment. And yet, I still have the responsibility of fulfilling my dreams. But then I'm putting that on him because I'm such a great support system. I can sacrifice everything. So going back to those promises too is part of cutting out the chaos. This is showing yourself you're not disposable. You're worthy of love. And I'm going to show me. I'm going to be the first one to build that trust back with me, to build that relationship back with me. Yeah.
And I think as we're growing up,
Hmm.
we are pushed to find connections. Okay. Some of those come naturally, but many times we are sort of pushed by people around us. Why aren't you dating? Why aren't you married? Why don't you have kids? Your relationship doesn't look good from this side. Why don't you get divorced? Somebody's always throwing something at you. And these, we hear these voices in our head because we replay it when we're not feeling good enough about ourselves. And um, it took me a long time. And there are still days that, I'll look in the mirror and that's not the person I think I want to be. And then I have to step back and say, why not? What's wrong with that person? And when I can't come up with a list of what's wrong with that person, it's like, then that's who you are, but you're the only one who can change it.
Exactly. The grace of imperfection. I mean, we extend so much grace to everybody in our lives. They're allowed to be imperfect, Karen.
Yeah.
But you are your biggest critic. And the conversations sometimes we have with ourselves are not coming from a place of, I'm having this conversation with me because I love me. No, it's you're taking on the role of maybe an abuser or maybe somebody who wanted to transfer their imperfections to you. It's not a voice of love, it's not a voice of truth. So sometimes the grace of imperfection is something I have to lean on during my coaching sessions. I remind people it's okay to have a bad day. You're just looking again. It's not perfection we're looking for. It's that aha of, yeah, it's getting better.
Well, I used to say that on a cloudy day here in Cleveland, Ohio, and we have a lot of cloudy days here, especially in the wintertime. Um, I would tell people on a daily basis that I don't feel good, I'm
Mm,
not happy,
mm,
and I was blaming it on the weather. It was cloudy out, so therefore I feel cloudy. And I went through a depression about 10 years ago, and I remember my son sitting with me and saying, "Do you know what you're depressed about?" And I looked out the window. It was winter day. I said, "Look how gray and cloudy it is, and it's cold and it's snowing." He said, "Mom, where are you?" "You're in the house. It's warm. You can
mm,
turn the lights on." And I looked at him as like, "Where did you become so wise?" And then out of the blue, he said to me, "Do you know what's on the other side of those clouds?" I said, "More clouds?" He said, no, sunshine. The sun is above the clouds, Mom. So just look at the clouds, but just keep peering because you will see the sun. And that was how I started to get through my depression. It can be cloudy out, but it's sunny just above the clouds. I just can't see it right now. But you know what? Eventually, the clouds are going to break and I'm going to see the sun. And
So,
so I had to change what I was doing
mhm,
and I had to commit to it because once I knew that it felt good, I wanted to hold on to it.
absolutely. Beyond the clouds, there is the sun, right? Sometimes we are not able to emotionally regulate ourselves. We can't actually, say, okay, it's okay to feel something, but it's not going to control me. And part of the healing journey that I love and talk about is that ability to take back the power. Not just cloudy. Behind the clouds, there's the sun, right? And I'm not going to let that take control of my day. And that's just so powerful. Yes, it's your story, but I'm just borrowing it just to explain the point. When we emotionally regulate and we're able to see that space, we take back the power. You're calling back so much of your energy, so much of your ability to dictate who you are presently. You're calling back your productivity. It's just taking back the power. And thank you for sharing that because every person who's healing needs to know it's possible to say, I'm going to have a good day today and have it.
And it's interesting because I don't tell people, friends, or clients that what I went through in my toolbox is going to work for you
Mm,
because you have to commit to it. You have to want to feel it. You want to experience it. Um, I'm married 41 years and my husband and I spent a lot of time together. And there are some days that I just don't want to talk. But in
mm,
my head, I think about when we were younger and we were both working full time and we had all these other things that when we got together, we wanted to talk. We wanted,
to
to be
spend
together.
time together. Yeah,
And so I started thinking about, well, hey, what's wrong with our situation now? And I had to realize there's nothing wrong. It's different. I have to accept it for what it is, or I can be miserable, you know. And in the beginning, that's how I was feeling. It was like, we're just sitting next to each other on the couch and we're not even talking to each other. What kind of marriage is this? And then it was like, it's okay because I'm not giving into what I think the people outside of my house expect me to be doing in my house.
absolutely. Absolutely. So that intentionality, that openness for change is the first step in any recovery. Any recovery, you have to be open for change. But in every, there's before as a coach, this is before when I was naive, I thought that relationships, long-term relationships like yours, they don't have any disagreement, no miscommunication, no nothing. I had to learn that, hey, it's not because they don't argue, it's because that they argue in a healthy way or they have disagreements in a healthy way, and they're able to quickly bounce back and recognize that, hey, it's not that I don't want to spend time with my husband today. No, it's because maybe the situation has changed and I have to evolve. That ability to be intentional, I had to recognize that, man, I need that if I want a relationship. And most of the time, that's what I tell my clients. Nobody can get you out of that relationship, that toxic relationship. Nobody can get you off the drugs. Nobody can get you off of one box of wine a week. It's you. You're the magic. You know, again, behind the cloud, there's the sun. But guess who has to see it that way? Not me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So tell me a little bit about your coaching practice. Is it one on one? Do you do group coaching? Do you have a special format?
Yes. So I used to do a lot of group when I used to work for somebody as a coach, but now I moved when I work for myself. Now it's more one-on-one. I find that going back to one-on-one has been a little bit intense because of the group, you can just tell them what to do. But as one-on-one, it's based on the client. So it's a feedback loop. You're bouncing off of what they want and what they need. And every client's experience is different.
Right.
Some clients find healing through self-care. I just need a new haircut, or I need to go to the gym. And others find healing through service. They need to volunteer. They need to give a part of themselves. And just understanding as a coach that it is not my place to dictate what is going to work for this person in this situation, but it's them to find the process, for me just be a support system and hold their hand and stand outside of the problem and look into it with them by my side. So it's been a learning moment for me, but it's also been a place of growth for sure.
Well, when you do one-on-one, which is what I do, um, I find myself sometimes in the back of my head, I'm judging, and I have to tell myself, stop. This isn't your story, it's her story. So you can't judge how she feels,
Mhm.
how she got here, or where she's going to go. All you can do is listen and then help her see. And most of my clients are women, so those of you listening, when I keep saying her, um, help her see that she has options, but she's got to think about what those options are that she wants to take. I can tell her, hey, there's a fork in the road. Are you going to the right or the left? She's got to choose that.
Mhm.
And know that even if that's not the best choice, she can either come back and go the other direction, or she can create another fork in the road and go in a different direction.
Yeah.
So we have to learn that our mistakes are steps of learning.
Mm. So again, that ability to fail forward and learn from that mistakes. Of course, coming into one-on-one practice, there are some times where I saw a version of myself in the
Yeah.
client, and I had not made peace with that version of me. Oh my God, I hated the version of me that stayed longer in a toxic relationship, that made excuses, that accepted the manipulation and the lies. And this was being transferred onto the client. We fall into the habit of believing that as coaches, we get to separate who we are
No,
as we show up. No, we can put on a false persona and just play this avatar and, and make bank. But, have you ever just stopped and you'd be like, oh my God, this is me from a couple of years ago.
yep.
What if I had a person like me walking this journey with me? How would my life be different? I've had to step back. I've just When I see myself in a client, I have to practically I call it take logic, take the driving seat, and emotions, you take the back seat. Because of course I'm human. Of course I get triggered. Of course. But it's knowing, is this the place for it? You know? So yes, I have shared that. It was frustrating at first,
Yeah.
I have to admit.
And it's encouraging, I think, to a client when they realize their coach most likely has gone through coaching or may still be going through coaching, because the concept that I believe in, I tell every client, this is just one step
Mm,
in your journey in life.
mm,
Maybe it won't work for you. Why won't it
mhm,
work for you? Maybe I'm not the right coach. Maybe
mhm.
find a different coach. But it all really begins with making that commitment to whatever the change is the client wants. And, I've had clients come to me in the first, interview, they'll say to me, tell me what to do. And they'll rattle off all these things. And I'll say, no, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not your mother. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your doctor. I'm not your spouse. What is it that you want to do? So go back to your list. Let's start with number one. Do you want to do that? Do you want to change that? Well, that's not as important as, and then they'll fumble through the list and they'll come up with one. This is where I want to start. Okay. Now we have a starting point. And sometimes I almost feel like I just want to laugh out loud when they ask me that question. Tell me what to do. And part of my training has helped me in conversations with my youngest son. He's a young adult. He's been living away from home and building his career, but he's on the autism spectrum, very high up there. But even so, there are days that I'm his sounding block.
Mhm.
And he said to me yesterday, Mom, you're different than you used to be. I said, because I listen now. When you're living at home, I was mom. So what does mom do? This is how you do the laundry. This is how you do this. But now I ask him, like he said to me the other day, I haven't had time to do laundry. I said, well, do you have any options? He goes, no, I just have to do it. Okay. I said, do you have any other options? He said, do you have any ideas? I said, well, there are laundry services. And as soon as I told him how expensive laundry services were, he said, you know what? I'm going to go home and do a lot of laundry tonight. But he made those decisions. I could give him some ideas, some choices. And he said, what a difference it is because you don't tell me what to do. I said,
So
yeah,
the role of a coach is different, right?
right,
And sometimes that's why I said you can't just play it. Because when you come onto a call with a client with an ego and a monkey say do, a monkey say, no, that doesn't work because they have to play a big role in the decisions that they make. Most
right.
of the time, the reason that they're on the call with us is somebody took that away from them at some point. And even though they say, what do I do next? That's just coming from overwhelm. They're not asking you, oh yeah, paint my picture. This is an opportunity for you to play your God complex that you've been hiding in the background. No. When we play a role as a coach, and I can't wait to be a mom because I mean the feeling is, everybody says wait, 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 but I can't wait. But playing that role in somebody's life and moving from mom to confidant to advisor, that some people don't make that. They don't make that move, and that damages their relationships. It also goes back to making the choice. And I mean, did you notice a difference between the switch in the roles in
I,
how
yeah,
closeness or something like that?
I started to notice it. So the more I was coaching, the more I found that when he would come to me with certain things or just, like complain, I don't have time to do my laundry. It's not like he lives down the road that he could drop it off here on a busy day and I could do it for him. But I started realizing as a coach, well, wait a second. I don't want to enable him. I want him to be able to do the things that he needs to do. And so, I'll give him, you know, I'll ask him, well, if you really need to do this, can you find the time? You look at your schedule. I'll sit back while you do that. And it's like, well, no, it's too busy. Okay. Well, here are some other things that you might want to think about because sometimes we don't know. Like he said, he never even heard of laundry service. He says, is that like going to the dry cleaners? I said, yes, you got it. Um, I also made that switch and felt it because I realized my mother was wonderful. She lived to 96 and a half years old. I had her for 66 years of my life. But for 66 years, she was my mother. And I was taking care of her for the last 2 months of her life. And she would get not mad at anybody else when they would bring her food. Me. I didn't cut up the watermelon right. Her cup of water was too warm or too cold. It was like, oh my God, am I ever going to please you, lady? But I was the one that she knew that she could do that to. She couldn't do it
Mm,
to other people. And I
mm.
thought, I don't want to be remembered for that. Now, I remember my mother for a lot of wonderful things, but I realized at that point, my son was becoming a young adult. I don't want him to go into his adult life and I'm mothering him because
And
we're
that's
different
that's the
stages.
beauty about evolving relationships. So sometimes I hear on my calls, the relationship ended because we fell out of love with each other. Loving somebody is a feeling. Being loyal to somebody is a choice, right? That choice to go above what I want or what would please the traumatized child in me and stepping out of that, it's not a feeling. It's a choice. It has to be intentional. 41 years didn't just happen for Karen. It didn't just happen.
Right.
She didn't just walk into 41 years after her wedding day. It came with very much intentionality and very much choice to build those 41 years. And that's the thing. When I sometimes am coaching clients, they hold on to the victim mentality, because somebody else has to be responsible for what happened in their lives.
Absolutely. We don't want to be responsible for our sadness.
But they fail to see that taking that responsibility, taking ownership is the magic. The 41 years of your marriage, that wasn't victim mentality that made it there. No, that was the ownership part of you where you're like, oh yeah, things have changed. We're not working now. But guess what? I'm going to find out what's different and evolve towards it. The relationship with your son, it didn't just find itself into a place of advisory now or
Right.
coaching. You had to intentionally put in the effort. And I know sometimes it has to be logic driving and emotions is fighting against logic, but helping people see that that is possible is what I get joy out of is, because it kind of reaffirms, this is selfish. It reminds me that I did the right thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And too many of us give our power away for many reasons. Um, some kids in school give their power away because somebody is picking on them, and that person is a little bit bigger than them. So you know what? They're going to pick on me, and I'm going to be the victim for the rest of my life. Um, Others of us get into relationships and let those relationships victimize us, but we're letting it happen. It took
Mhm.
me a very long time. And when I say long time, over 40 years of realizing that my first marriage really was meant to be. It didn't end the way I wanted it to end, but it had to end. And now I can look at it and go, you know what? I wasn't the innocent person in that marriage. There were two of us, and neither one of us were really ready, prepared to be in the relationship at that time. But it took me 40 plus years to realize it. And the day that I did, I was writing a blog about something and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't dislike him. In fact, I like him for breaking us up. because now I know I'm in the right place. We're not going to know that the first time we
Oh yeah,
feel disengaged. And we probably won't believe that we'll ever get there, but you can if you work on it.
I know when you're in a
Um,
place of anger, it just happened. And I understand some separations need to happen. That anger needs to fuel the separation. But sometimes when I'm making YouTube videos or making content for the angry version of me, it's so hard to step into that. Because now when you're actually grateful that it happened, it's so hard to step into that anger and be like, you did this and you were a liar and you were a manipulator. I'm like, wait, it takes two. And I'm like, there are parts of me that had to change to
right.
get that. And
It's
sometimes people don't want to hear it because they're still angry. And I get it. But once you get there, you're like, oh my God, my healing is almost complete.
absolutely. So, how can my listeners find you? Maybe get some of your coaching advice or,
And that's a great question. So I do have a YouTube channel and an Instagram channel. I think I will give you the link and you'll attach it to this. YouTube is best because it's on demand, it's more lengthy, more structured on topics. But also, there's also links on my YouTube channel to see if you qualify for one of my complimentary sessions.
okay,
But first, see if you connect with the content. You have to
okay,
connect with the coach. And sometimes our healing is not tied to a person. And it's okay if it's not me. Just keep looking, you'll find someone.
I love that you said that because I've been saying this for the last couple of years, and I've had a couple of coaches who have said to me, Karen, stop saying that. I said, it's like going to a doctor. If you don't connect with the doctor, you're not
Mm,
going to believe anything the doctor ever says to you. The doctor could tell you, that you have to go on a diet, and you're going to look in the mirror and say, oh, you're crazy. I don't have to go on a diet. You have to have that connection. And
mhm,
I have had clients who I actually have said, even after the first session, we're not connecting. Do you agree or disagree? And sometimes they'll say, well, sort of, but maybe we will the next time. And I'll say, look, this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you some referrals. Go out, check their websites, find out if you can get an introductory, call into them. Find out. Because if they can understand you better than I can, your journey is going to be so much easier. And I'm
mhm.
not here to drag somebody down a journey that they don't want to be. I don't drag. I say, you lead me and I'm going to help you.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I'm not dragging you because if I have to drag you, you're not ready.
There you go. Like it's always been about curbing that um I would say that desperate need within us as a coach to be everything to everyone because that's also just a manifestation of some of the wounds we haven't healed. And sometimes it's okay to tell somebody, I'm probably not the best fit for you right now. Or I probably will be a fit for you at a later time in your journey. Maybe you're just not there yet. You need to figure out what you want. And that's a conversation I've had with some of my clients because they say they want to leave their relationship, but they really don't. And sometimes I have to say, hey, maybe at a later time, because I'm not
Absolutely.
going to just sit here and, you know, be your friend. So,
Well,
yeah.
Rachel, it has been wonderful having you on. All your information will be in the show notes. And I really want to stress to those who are listening, if any of our conversation resonated with you, um, I really do think that it might be time to pick up the phone, write an email, um,
Mhm.
and connect. Because the longer we wait, the longer those wounds fester.
Mhm.
And I wrote about this yesterday, and it's on my website that what are you waiting for? Now, Racheal, you're right. You might say to them, or I might say to them, maybe you're not quite ready yet. But even that conversation can get them to start to think about what it is that they want to do. And there's a lot of free information on the internet on coaching. So check it out. Check out Racheal's information in our show notes. And just want to wish you a wonderful journey as you continue forward. Thank you.